Welcome to Beyond the Billboard, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of out-of-home advertising. I'm Greg Wise, and I've spent years helping brands navigate the world of marketing and media planning.
And I'm Charlie Riley. I've spent 2 decades leading marketing teams who've pondered the same question about out-of-home. If you're a growth-focused marketer looking for data-driven ways to stand out, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Billboard. I am your co-host, Greg Wise, co-founder and CCO here at OneScreen.ai, joined by my esteemed co-host, Charlie Riley, head of marketing here at OneScreen, and it is Halloween. So happy Halloween to everyone. And for those listening and not visually looking at us, we are in some costume, some form of a costume. So maybe that'll be enticing for folks to actually watch the video. Very excited. I think this is going to be my favorite episode so far, and a very special guest here, guys. Premesh Purayil, who is in Prem. We call him Prem. So Prem, hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Prem is CTO of OUTFRONT Media. So as you all know, we talk a lot about out-of-home advertising. So this is a pretty big deal. Prem's going to go into his background, but he's got over 20 plus years of experience in ad tech, software engineering, and now as CTO at OUTFRONT. You're transforming a lot over there, Prem, and I'll let you kind of go through all of that. But welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'm excited to be here, and sorry I'm not as dressed up as as you two are. I'm jealous, but yeah, definitely excited to be here.
Don't be jealous. I'm wearing bunny ears. My daughter's bunny ears. Well, Prem, appreciate you joining the show. You are sort of newer to out-of-home and curious what the background is. Like, what's your story? How did you end up where you are now? Because you kind of told us it's an interesting one. So
yeah, it is definitely not where I would have ever managed I would be, especially how long I've been in ad tech. So I've been in ad tech for, as you said, about 20 years. Come from the online media side. So I was at a website for about 10 years. As a CTO, early days programmatic, header bidding, got into all of that, worked with direct sales teams, data activation, on-site, off-site. Just that's where I kind of cut my teeth on everything ad tech. Went on to a vendor called Freestar, and worked as their CTO for a few years as well. And that was a managed service across publishers. So again, still on the media side, on the online media side, mostly display, a bit of CTV, and obviously video. And then consulted a bit, but and all I ever really knew was online media, and then again into CTV. I would probably, candidly say I actively avoided out of home probably my entire career for all the reasons why I think the common perception of out of home is of what it is. It's just that, it's not measurable, you can't track it. It's just billboards, or maybe it's small screens and, in a gas station, and, what's the value there? So I just did everything I can to stay away from it, just to be quite honest. About a little over a year ago now. So I've been here full time since last September. Last May, I was approached to kind of come in and do an audit with OUTFRONT. Never heard of OUTFRONT before. I've been in, again, ad tech for many years, going to all the conferences. Never heard of it. I've heard of gas station TV and Atmosphere and all the other kind of digital out-of-home folks, but never, and I knew Clear Channel only just because of its broader, history. Sure. But that was it. So I wasn't sure what out-of-home was, but, someone asked me some questions about digital out-of-home, what I thought about it. I gave my honest opinion, which wasn't good. Tell them what the opportunity was, which I thought, similar to CTV a few years ago. And they asked me to kind of come in and do an audit and take a look at the tech. They thought they had a tech problem. They didn't have any centralized tech leadership. So I really did it as a favor, quite honestly, to kind of come in and do that bit. And I think they even, when I had the initial conversation, well, maybe you'll like it enough you'll want to join. I'm like, no, I don't think so. I'll help you find somebody, totally fine. I don't know. I don't really know hardware, that side of the business, or I don't know if I'm interested, but I know core ad tech. Went in, did the audit. And I actually remember even a month into it, talked to my wife because I was consulting for OUTFRONT and telling my wife, oh God, I'm glad I might, this will be done in a couple of months and I'll move on, because this is a whole different world, and they're not there yet. It wasn't until after I started kind of peeling, the layers of the onion back and understanding what is available, the fact that there is measurement, there is tech there. It's just poorly understood when it comes to the outside of out of home. And it's not that OUTFRONT in particular, hasn't represented itself in, outside of, in other, within its own medium and its own conferences, just hasn't really been seen elsewhere. So, over the course of 3 months, I went from being like, I don't want anything to do with this, but I'll do the work because I can audit the tech, to being like, holy shit, this is amazing. It's one of the last, if not the last, legacy media format. This is an amazing brand that just hasn't made the jump, and it feels like CTV. I know now, being here as long as I have, it was my reaction. People have said this for a while, but I really feel like it is. It felt like CTV pre-pandemic, where the inventory was there. There just wasn't trust in the medium. You couldn't measure it, poor exposure around it. So my feedback at the end of the, near the end of the consulting piece was, yeah, the tech can get better. There's no question. That's a solvable problem. I've been here. I've been in tech for a while, but I can help us navigate that. It's not going to happen overnight. That's the easy answer. The harder answer, harder only because it's not directly in my control, is there's that, marketing and sales kind of perception problem, right? How we sell the medium, I think, is still relatively, we're bought, not sold. That is, largely speaking, in out of home. And we see that within Outfront. I assume it's similar with the other kind of big three as well. And that's, where we're stuck. So, I went through that, that consulting gig. And by the end of it, started looking to hire a CTO. And that, they did a search around it. And then ultimately they asked me to throw my hat in. And I was like, oh, well, maybe this is a interesting opportunity. And then that's where it, turned into consulting, into coming in full time. So I went from being a completely non-believer, and I'm technical, I understand everything around it. I think I understand the broader ecosystem fairly well, to being a hardcore believer in a matter of 3 months, just understanding, how it all worked and, what it can be.
And here we are. It's interesting. Look, to be honest with you, and I think I told you this when we first spoke, but my background was basically the opposite of billboards, being at a place like HubSpot, which was inbound. And billboards were like this outbound thing, right? So was quite literally selling against it. And it was kind of by happenstance getting into this industry, but had the sort of same reaction that you did, which is, whoa, this is an incredible industry. And there's so much more to it than I even knew. And then I come to realize that there's more to it than most of the marketing world really knows. And yeah, I agree. The tech side of things is part of it. Probably not the hardest part. It's the education, it's the awareness, what kinds of inventory, how to buy that inventory, who are the players. So it's interesting.
Look, I think that the biggest piece of feedback I have was the lack of exposure in the broader. Yeah. Again, going to conferences for years, my impression of digital out of home was atmosphere TV and gas station TV and reach TV. And I think that's a lot of people's impression of what digital out of home is, effectively CTV out of home versus digital signage, which is very different and in fact not connected to most channels where you likely are buying from, right? And I think they might think that they're buying billboards when they buy digital out of home. The reality is they're not, or they think they just aren't targeting that. But there's quite a bit of misconception around that in the space. Again, would never have known had I not been in it and then on the digital signage side of it.
Yeah. And out of curiosity, because I know you have a lot of focus on the digital side of things at Outfront. We ourselves partner with you guys. We work very closely with you guys. What is your sort of outlook on out of home, like the next 12 months, 24 months? And how do you look at things like digital playing with static and vice versa?
It is. Look, I don't think there's a world where static goes away entirely. And I think that's on purpose, right? Where when you look at every other legacy media format, print went to online, radio went to obviously podcast and streaming. You went from linear television into CTV and streaming as well. That inventory fundamentally changed, and how you measure it and track it fundamentally changed, right? And those legacy formats are effectively being left behind. They're still there, but they're being left behind. You don't expect to see much of it in the future. Billboards is not like that, because the technology to do measurement around a static billboard is effectively the same technology you use for a digital billboard. Nothing different about it. So it doesn't mean it can't work. It works any less. There's limitations on static versus digital, but there's also advantages on static, because you can do very elaborate, billboards that you can't do through a digital screen. So there's both sides to it, and then not to mention street furniture and everything else. So the out of home experiential side, I think will always accompany both. But I think there's going to be a decent opportunity, everywhere to convert some amount of static billboards into digital as we go forward, because we know the value is there, right? The value in being able to take a standard, effectively a rectangle, and be able to deliver programmatically to it, be able to change that dynamically, have dynamic creative that runs into it. So that capability drives up the value of the inventory for sure. So I think, again, long term, we're going to find some balance of both. I'm sure it's more than what it is now, certainly how we're looking at it. But the makeup of static digital, I think that will shift, but not to the point where it's 80% digital and 20% static. But outside of that, I think the things that are coming to change is just the solving around the difficulty of transacting in the medium. I think today, again, heavy direct sold, again, so results very manual. Obviously, programmatic coming into digital will help, but again, that's not everything. I think that the introduction of, especially when you talk about the big three, and I think we're all in various forms of working with different platforms and bringing in, just easing that process. I think agentic, something we released or talked about very recently with AWS, that allows us to kind of step over the whole hurdle of manual buying and going back and forth and phone calls and emails and pigeons and whatever you're using to run those buys. You can actually leapfrog some of the existing process in place and just get over that step. And I think out of home will have a unique opportunity there to take advantage of it.
Yeah. And that was big news. And, feel free to sort of explain to what extent you can. But I am curious, like folks are going to be curious because they've seen the press release. Like, tell us a little bit about the AWS sort of launch, what that means. And you already started talking about it, but like, what does it mean for you guys? What does it mean for the industry?
Yeah, look, I think, so it's a couple of things. One, with AWS, our partnership there was just broadly to modernize our infrastructure. We're a relatively old enterprise company, 30 years old. A lot of our core tech is just built in legacy systems that are not even in the cloud. So AWS partnership was to just drive that modernization effort in general, which will help us as a business completely, right? The agentic side of it was, something that evolved out of that conversation, but, really dovetails out of us wanting to solve the, a problem that we believe exists around agencies and holdcos today with out of home and their lack of visibility into out of home inventory properly, right? Though they may be able to see digital out of home inventory, again, as I mentioned earlier, probably more so CTV out of home, not digital signage. And even then, if they're seeing digital signage, they're seeing a subset of the inventory. Most operators are exposing just their unsold inventory, so it's a subset. So their ability to see avails future looking is based on what they've seen in the past, and we know that's not everything, right? Then add to that lack of audience data, lack of measurement in those systems. So planning systems generally don't include out of home. They typically have specialists that manage that inventory, and that budget's carved out arbitrarily in most cases upfront. And as more and more of these planning systems are getting automated and AI is being brought in it to effectively feed it a plan and feed it a brief and give me a plan, if out of home's not in that system, we're going to get more. I mean, the thought is that we'll get effectively more and more optimized out, because the easy path is the easy path. And why would you continue to, arbitrarily cut a piece out? And if at a minimum, it limits our ability to grow, because we're in an area that's still a manual endeavor. So, what we wanted to do is really try to go and solve for that and bring our data inventory, avails, audience data, measurement directly into planning systems to fill that gap, but not in a way where we feel like we're doing it that's proprietary to us, in a way that's hopefully going to be a bit more open and ideally encourage others to do the same, right? Just to go fill that gap. So whether it's us and Lamar and Clear Channel, other publishers, there's nothing about this we're doing that's special. Not everyone will be able to do, but I think, again, if the big three did it, that's 60, 70% of the market. I think that's, a pretty good step in the right direction. More importantly, I think it gives then those agencies the ability to do a true omni-channel campaign, see measurement across our medium as well as everything else, and then understand, with data at scale, does out of home belong in the beginning, middle, and end of a campaign, or throughout, depending on the KPI you're driving, right? Or whatever outcome you're driving for. Today, we know it because we've run one-off studies that we can point to a white paper, but it's not baked into the MMN. It's not baked into the model to have a system recommend out of home because it believes out of home will, impact that campaign.
Do you want to run your own account-based marketing program, but you're feeling overwhelmed by complex jargon, expensive tech stacks, and unclear strategies? Scrappy ABM Podcast offers proven strategies and actionable plays that you can use to get started with quick wins. Learn at your own pace, simplify ABM to start seeing real results. Visit Scrappy ABM Podcast or tune into the Scrappy ABM Show wherever you listen to podcasts. From where you came from before and more digital marketing, and maybe just thinking about most marketers who, like you said, maybe haven't been exposed to out of home before, do you think they haven't tried the channel in the past because what you just explained about agentic and and how you're thinking about delivering that data? Do you think that just hasn't been there yet for them to understand that? Or do you think it's more they're used to measuring other channels a certain way and they just have not understood how measurement happens in out of home, and they're hoping it would look a different way, but it's different, but you can, like you said, you can still measure it. I guess I'm just wondering if you have an opinion on why certain marketers maybe haven't used the channel and just that misperception of measurement in general.
Yeah, I think it's two things. One, on the static side, again, I think there's just perception. Your granddaddy's billboard. I don't know if I want to buy a billboard. That's for the guy that wants to buy a sign that says turn left here. That's not me. So there's perception, right? On digital, again, we see this, and I'm sure others do as well. We see folks that come in and buy a really small amount and then never come back again, right? And they did it all on their own. They probably, and likely, they didn't see any results. They didn't see results because they didn't do a proper buy with the scale to see the impact of it. And even if they did, if they weren't working with someone on measurement, because you can't drop impression tracking pixels, you can't drop conversion pixels. Maybe, had a QR code, maybe you did something, but ultimately you likely you didn't work with someone directly at enough scale to see an impact, and then you go away, right? So you're burned and you don't come back because you tested it, you moved on. And that's likely what happens at scale with some of the more modern buyers. So I do think the more digital savvy modern buyers today are likely not including, digital out of home because, it doesn't have all the data, the tools that they're using. It doesn't have all that, accompanying it to tell them to spend more in it necessarily, again, especially for digital out of home. So I think it's a handful of things that kind of restrict it. I think that's where we have an opportunity to help educate, to help integrate, and just make it more exposed.
It seems like it's everyone's role within the industry to educate, because a lot of marketers they don't have the back, like you said, or they might want to run a campaign by themselves. They probably didn't execute it correctly the first time, which is not a knock on them. They don't have the experience doing that. And they've burned the channel for themselves and for the company because the misalignment with what true results were versus maybe what they perceived. I think that's a really good example.
In Prem, we kind of talked about this a little bit too, which is I feel like there's a lot of fragmentation with how out of home is sold. So even if, assuming that you have a marketer or a brand's attention, and I just feel like there's not a standard way of selling the proper campaign relative to business outcome.
Yeah.
And, whether that's buying programmatically, whether it's buying direct, whether it's buying digital or it's buying static. It's like, how do we get over that? How do we sort of fix that? Because that's hard.
That is I think it's, again, as I spoke earlier about, how legacy formats moved from one channel to the other. So there was fundamentally different. So you sold it fundamentally different from the start. I do think this is a result of just the evolution of our medium, the fact that we didn't leave static behind. We still sell. static is still large. I think 95% of my inventory is effectively static. So you still sell static, and if it ain't broke, you're not going to fix it. You're going to continue to sell it the way that it has, and we've done a good job of doing so. But again, I think just historically, we're at least for a while now, if not for longer, we are a industry that's bought, not sold. We've said that, multiple people have said that many times. We are not selling solutions for the most part. We are just selling time and space. And again, if you rewind 10, 15 years, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what we had to do. But when you look at, again, I assume Clear Channel and are similar, again, because they're, been around for similar lengths of time. If we're all selling in that way, we have over 14,000 brands, customers that we work with. That means we have taught them to perceive our inventory as time and space, because that's how we sell it, right? So again, the opportunity as we start to evolve that that strategy and that story and how we sell, I think it's actually kind of exciting because we have a massive workforce. And, whether, again, OUTFRONT, Lamar, Clear Channel, the big three, if they start selling this differently, you're going to change perception of the industry and at a large scale, because that's, 14,000, 15,000, likely combined a lot more than that. Their perception of what out of home is can change. And I think that can be a very large force to change perception of the overall inventory.
Do you think that will include some challenges? And what I mean by that is that may mean, and look, this is from my own personal experience helping to grow OneScreen and where we are and who we serve, but saying no to a potential brand who has an idea of doing something that inherently will not work relative to the business outcome that they've told you they want. And I feel like it's going to take some of that for us to all kind of get through this.
Yep, 100%.
What's your perspective on that? Yeah.
Look, I would love to be in a position, hopefully within a year from now, where we are running measurement on the majority of the campaigns that we run at OUTFRONT, right? I think last year we did around 60 of them across thousands and thousands of campaigns. So effectively, it sounds great. 60 campaigns a lot. When you talk about how many campaigns we've actually run within the company, it's nothing, right? Relative to.
Yeah.
Whereas, when you look at, I think I was at the live ramp up conference earlier this year, and Paramount was on stage saying we now include measurement on every single campaign that you do. Inherently, it happens. I'd love to be in that place because it shows trust and confidence in what the medium can do. But if I were to just turn on measurement on every campaign we do today, the vast majority would probably not do well because it wasn't sold to perform on a outcome. That's not necessarily it can, by chance perhaps, but I don't think it was sold on it. And there's likely a fear of, well, if it doesn't perform, then they're not going to want to come back and buy again. You're like, well, that might be true in some cases if it's completely wrong. But if you sold an outcome and you measure it and it doesn't deliver, it obviously gives you the opportunity to improve and then renew and do another campaign. Because we know this, we've seen this again, broader digital media. Whenever you add measurement to a campaign, it increases your ability to renew that campaign and increase the deal size afterwards because they see what worked, what didn't work. And you're going back intelligently saying, well, that didn't work. We're going to make these adjustments. We're going to cut some spend here. We're going to increase spend here. And the next campaign is going to do even better. And then when they see that, you keep walking up that chain. That's, again, medium and at a Salesforce where we just haven't done that at scale because it was never there to be had. We can't really expect much, but I think that's the opportunity here as that starts to come on board and become part of our tool belt.
Yeah, completely agree there. One of the things I learned early on, and I'm not a marketer, I play one on TV, but obviously like my time at HubSpot and just my peers, my constituents that I got the pleasure of and fortunate to work with and learn from, marketers want learnings.
Yeah.
So it's, because I see people who not necessarily guarantee results, but sort of promise these results. The truth is there's a lot of things that are out of our control also.
Sure.
Some things might not work, but the point is, to your point, is to optimize, learn from it, learn about what didn't actually work. To me, that's actually success.
Yes. Yeah.
Not every single campaign is going to be a home run, but I think that's the conversation that has to happen up front.
Yeah.
Right? When that conversation doesn't happen up front and someone feels like they're buying something that's a guaranteed slam dunk, then there's sometimes a difficult conversation. And then, to Charlie and your point, then there may be a little bit, jaded from the medium. Yeah. So I think, we kind of have to come together. And I think personally, with outcomes in mind, and then my other question to you is on the measurement piece in a second here, is outcomes in mind, but how do we think about measurement? Because I feel like that's a little fragmented also. We have marketers and brands using their own in-house modeling. You have a lot of folks now doing measurement for out of home. So where does that go from here?
I mean, look, I fundamentally, industry needs a solution that we can all kind of align on. So I think that we're waiting for that to happen. I know Geopath is working on, their next iteration of what that looks like, both for impression calculation, which is obviously very important for out of home because, again, there's no client-side tracking pixels to just track this for you at scale. But then the measurement side to understand attribution and, where it's happening, that is, you're right. There's a lot of solutions out there. That is one of the problems. But again, perception is that there's none, right? We're not there. There's a lot, but understanding which one and how it works and where they should work, because there are a lot that do different things and specialize or, focus on different areas. There needs to be, someone that kind of steps forward to be kind of the de facto. I know there's a handful of folks in the industry that are stepping up to be just that, or at least position themselves to be just that. So to me, that's not a question of if, it's a question of when. I think that'll happen. I think they'll happen over the next 12, hopefully to 24 months, and we'll push forward there. It doesn't mean that there's no room for other measurement vendors. I mean, you can go back to online media. There's plenty of measurement vendors, but you still need kind of the de facto one that everyone is like, that's the one that we use to qualitatively compare, metrics across different areas. Like, that's the one. And then if we want to focus in a particular area, then, you use, your various, specific vendors there. That makes sense.
You've mentioned this now a few times. So I went right into measurement. You're like, well, no one even knows about measurement in out of home. And I kind of always go back to this also. It's the education piece.
Yeah.
If you could boil it down, what do you think the biggest gap between where we are now and where we need to be in out of home? So I'll sort of lead this a little bit. There's education, there's technology, there's who we want to go after. What do you think is like the number one missing piece right now? And it could be all the above, by the way.
I mean, it's certainly a mix of all. I mean, again, tech needs to catch up. But again, I don't think there's anything that's revolutionary that needs to come to it. It's just get it to the standards of everything else. That also has to do with how you buy and you plan, transact, and measure the medium. All that kind of needs to happen a bit more flawlessly, or in a way where it's less. But I think the bigger unlock, again, is just helping drive perception. To me, that is how we sell and how we market outside of out of home, to help understand the medium better for folks that don't spend in the medium. So I'd love to see more exposure from the bigger players in out of home. I was at Ad Week, and it's not that out of home is not present there, but it's tiny, right? And at the industry events I've gone to in the past, there might be an out-of-home event, but it's like the one-off one in the corner in the back hall, where they kind of talk about it, and that's it. You're not front and center, you're not there. And there needs to be a more concentrated effort to go push that forward to enforce it to be top of mind, I think. Again, it's just changing perception to me is generally more, it's out on the street, it's marketing than it is anything else. I do think there's, we're in a bit of a unique opportunity scenario or time right now where folks are, we see what's happening with AI and agentic online, and there's a lot of question about what's going to happen with display inventory, and we don't know, right? And then there's a generation of folks that are also leaning away from being online all the time, right? And that's happening, and if that's going to continue, then what does that mean? But the fact that you have stuff that's in real life, IRL, that's out there, that's not going to go anywhere. You can't skip it. You can't, there's no fraud. I think it's a great place to be able to lean into and focus on the value of inventory that's in real life and how it connects to cultural moments and all that, where we're just at this great inflection point where folks are starting to question, I think, what the value of online inventory, display inventory is, and start looking at other places where you can see more value.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. And quite frankly, I guess my follow-up to that, and I know I feel like we should do part 2, Prem, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Would love your perspective on programmatic.
Oh yeah.
I feel like a lot of folks, number one, don't know. Truthfully, a lot of folks we work with, they don't know who Clear Channel is or OUTFRONT is, or maybe they know one or the other, let alone the idea of buying through automation or programmatically. But would love to kind of dig into that on another episode. I do have one last question for you, though, which is customer segment that you feel will help grow the industry. Like, how are you guys thinking about who to go after? Because, and I'll kind of give you the two extremes. You have the long tail, right? You have like the local markets, and then you have, the enterprise, and and a lot of that is driven through the large agency, the whole coast. Where do you see the growth coming from? Just from like who to go after, who to work with?
I'm going to cheat and say it's both top and bottom, and I'll tell you why, right? So yes, the SMB, the long tail is an opportunity. Again, that goes back to the difficulty in buying the medium. How do you make it easier? And self-service platforms like that, you see that and again, you go back to online media, any large successful media publisher has a self-service business to just allow long tail to come in and transact. That opportunity is going to be there. We'll go after that as well. It should be there. And you see there's a lot of folks, a lot of vendors in the space that do that, provide that service already, unify the inventory, and it's there. So I think that will be a portion of his unlock. The other part at the top end, the enterprise side, though, again, I would argue we probably work with all the enterprise top tier brands, but starting to shift those conversations. So one of the focus we've had around some of the changes this year is just our enterprise brand solutions team, right? So strategically, how do you go after these brands and not just be in a place where they're coming to us and say, I want to buy these billboards. And we're like, okay, well, here's the price of these billboards and go on and we'll work with you. It's going upstream a bit, working with them as an agency and understanding what is it that they're trying to accomplish. And let's come back with you something that's much more than a handful of billboards. And it's an experience, right? I think that's where we have a unique opportunity. The industry has a unique opportunity to start understanding the value of what IRL inventory can really do. And it's not only billboards and screens, it's that and other things. So, we did Super Bowl last year with a lot of big building wraps. We've done drone shows, a lot of IR. We've done the Apple, what's that show from Apple? Severance.
Oh, Severance.
Yeah, in Grand Central. Yeah. Like these are things that, that you have to work with us to kind of take an idea and bring it, really to life that you can experience, interact with. And I think those are just massive opportunities to rethink yes, we're out of home, but out of home isn't just billboards, right? It's a lot more than that.
I always say my team is sick of me hearing it. If it flies, drives, or floats, and you can put an ad on it and it's outside of your house,
that's right.
It's out of home.
Yeah.
But that means the world, it is a fragmented place. And I feel like, it's the education, the execution, all the above. Prem, this has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I could probably talk to you for like hours on end. Love what you guys are doing at OUTFRONT. Truly mean that. There's you guys are progressive. You guys want to, move the industry forward. And as close partners, we really appreciate that because we believe the same thing. And I am kind of loosely committing us to another episode here to talk about programmatic digital out of home.
More than happy to. So just to tie that off, ad tech is that's my passion. I love doing it. That's why when I came into out of home, people are like, why are you leaving ad tech going at home? I'm like, no, I'm not leaving ad tech. I want to bring more of it into it. Having said that, when I got here, I was like, okay, wait, before we go deep into the ad tech piece, because there's opportunities there and there's changes that we can improve, especially on programmatic and digital. We need to fix the foundation and we need to get this into a better spot. So here we are. That's a lot of the work we're doing right now is fixing that foundation, modernizing things, making us easier to transact with and more connected. That's our, immediate goal. And then, as we get into 2026, we'll start doing from my point of view, some of the more fun ad tech things around it and changing, hopefully, how we transact there.
Love it. And maybe we'll get some of our tech folks. Maybe we'll do a joint podcast and sit around the table and kind of do it and have an open dialogue about it. That could be interesting, honestly. Yeah. Well, look, Prem, really appreciate your time. This has been an awesome discussion. Two things, obviously, OUTFRONT, but where can folks find you? How can they work with you guys? Tell us about that. We know, but the viewers and the listeners might not.
Look, I'd like to think I'm fairly accessible. Certainly, I have a decent presence on LinkedIn, so I'm more than happy for you guys to reach out there. I post quite a bit and, by all means, interact with me, reach out to me. I'm generally pretty open to just, set up a time and let's chat and talk about some opportunities or just, talk shop about where out of home is and where it can go. So that's probably your best bet.
It's great. Yeah. And your LinkedIn content is great. So for folks out there, definitely give them a follow. And for myself and Charlie Riley, this is another episode of Beyond the Billboard. It's a great one. Excited about number 2. And any folks listening, happy Halloween. And those watching, my bunny ears and Charlie's
Snorlax. I don't even know. Yeah. It's Pokemon, I guess.
Thank you for joining, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks,
Prem.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Beyond the Billboard.
If you liked what you heard, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And if you found value today, share this with a fellow marketer who should be thinking bigger about out-of-home advertising.
If you're looking for a template to build your out-of-home program, visit OneScreen.ai to get a free media plan or connect with us on LinkedIn for all the latest out-of-home insights.
This has been Beyond the Billboard. We'll see you next time.